The aroma of cinnamon and cloves hung heavy in my kitchen, a comforting December ritual. Rebecca, however, didn't seem comforted. She wrinkled her nose, her gaze fixed on the gingerbread house I was meticulously decorating. "We can't have her cooking again, Marcus," she said, her voice tight. "Last year was a disaster. My son, Marcus, shifted uncomfortably, caught between his wife and his mother. Rebecca," he began, a plea in his tone. "Mom always makes a lovely Christmas dinner." Rebecca's lips thinned. "Lovely." The turkey was dry, the gravy lumpy, and the cranberry sauce tasted like it came straight from a can. "Julian's family does Christmas so much better. We should have it at their house this year." A cold knot formed in my stomach. Julian's family, with their catered meals and impersonal decorations, felt nothing like the warm, chaotic Christmases we'd always shared. "I've been making Christmas dinner for this family for over 40 years, I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your father loved my cooking." Rebecca waved her hand dismissively. "Times change, Esther. We're just trying to make sure everyone has a good Christmas." Her words, though polite, dripped with condescension, and that includes decent food. I felt my cheeks flush, shame burning hot beneath the surface. "I'm sure your mother-in-law's cooking is exquisite," I managed, my voice trembling slightly. Rebecca smiled, a smug, triumphant little curve of her lips. "It is. She's a fantastic cook. We'll be having Christmas at their place this year, won't we, Marcus?" Marcus sighed, defeated. "I guess so," he mumbled. Avoiding my gaze, I wanted to scream, to rage, to demand my rightful place at the head of the Christmas table. But what was the point? I was just an old woman, clinging to outdated traditions, outmatched by a younger, more sophisticated generation. "Fine," I said, forcing a tight smile. "Have a lovely Christmas with Julian's family." I turned back to my gingerbread house, my hands trembling so badly that I nearly snapped the delicate icing icicles I'd just placed. Rebecca's voice followed me sharp and clear. "Don't worry, Esther. We'll send you some leftovers." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken disdain. The knot in my stomach tightened, twisting into something hard and cold. Leftovers. They were offering me leftovers, like some charity case. As they left, I stood there, the scent of cinnamon and cloves suddenly cloying, suffocating. Tears pricked at my eyes, blurring the intricate details of the gingerbread house. I'd poured my heart and soul into making Christmas special for my family year after year. And this was how it ended. Dismissed, relegated to the sidelines, offered scraps from someone else's table. I swiped at my eyes angrily. No, I wouldn't let them diminish me. I wouldn't let them erase decades of tradition. I wouldn't accept their pity. A flicker of resolve began to burn within me, small but steady. This wouldn't be the end of my Christmas. It would be the beginning of something new, something better. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. The scent of spices, no longer cloying, filled me with a strange sense of purpose. An idea, vague and unformed, began to take shape in my mind, a plan. I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew one thing. This Christmas, things would be different, very different. I opened my eyes, a new glint in them. "Leftovers," I whispered, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. We'll see about that. I picked up a piece of gingerbread, the sugary sweetness a sharp contrast to the bitter taste of rejection, and as I nibbled on it, the gears in my mind began to turn slowly, deliberately, piecing together the fragments of a plan that would not only reclaim my Christmas, but would also remind everyone, especially Rebecca and Julian, exactly who Esther Cohen was. Rain lashed against the window pane, mirroring the relentless drizzle within my own heart. Months had passed since Rebecca, my son Marcus's wife, declared me too old and frankly incompetent to host Christmas dinner. The words, flung at me like a handful of gravel, still stung. I stared out at the sodden garden, the vibrant blooms of summer now withered and brown, much like my own spirit. The house felt cavernous and empty, the silence amplifying the echo of Rebecca's cruel pronouncement. I just think it's time someone else took over, she'd said, her smile tight and brittle. For everyone's sake. I remember the way Marcus avoided my gaze, the silent plea in his eyes for me to let it go. But letting it go felt like letting go of a part of myself, a piece of my identity intricately woven with the tradition of hosting our family's Christmas celebrations. I traced the outline of a faded photograph on the mantelpiece, my fingers lingering over the image of a younger me, surrounded by my children, their faces alight with anticipation as I presented the Christmas turkey. Back then, the house was filled with laughter and the aroma of spices and roasting meat. Christmas was my domain, my special way of showing my family how much I loved them. Dinner's ready, I'd announce, and a stampede of happy feet would thunder down the stairs. Now, the thought of Christmas brought a knot to my stomach, a sour taste of resentment mixed with a deep, gnawing sadness. I wandered into the kitchen, the heart of our home, now cold and lifeless. The countertops, usually cluttered with baking ingredients and festive decorations, were bare and sterile. "Mom, you always make the best stuffing," Marcus would say every year, his eyes gleaming with genuine appreciation. Rebecca's words had tainted those memories, turning them into bittersweet reminders of what I'd lost. "Seriously, no one can make it like you," he'd insist, piling his plate high. The empty spice rack mocked me, the silence of the oven a constant reproach. Days bled into weeks, the dull ache in my chest a permanent fixture. I found myself withdrawing, avoiding phone calls and social gatherings. "Esther, are you all right?" my friend Sarah asked one afternoon, her voice laced with concern. "You seem a little distant lately." I forced a smile, muttering something about a lingering cold. The truth was, Rebecca's words had inflicted a wound far deeper than any illness. They had stripped me of my role, my purpose, my sense of belonging within the family. I felt like a discarded ornament, once cherished and now relegated to the dusty attic of their memories. The television droned in the background, its flickering images failing to penetrate the fog of my despair. A cooking show flashed across the screen, the chef enthusiastically describing the perfect Christmas roast. I switched it off, the sight of festive food only intensifying my misery. "Maybe she's right," I whispered to the empty room. "Maybe I am too old." The thought hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling. "Marcus, darling," I began, my voice wavering slightly. "About Christmas, I think Rebecca's right. Maybe it is time for someone else to take over. There was a pause. Then Marcus's voice, hesitant and uncertain. Mom, are you sure? I know how much Christmas means to you. Yes, dear, I replied, forcing a cheerful tone. I'm just feeling a little tired this year. It's time for the younger generation to take the reins. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. But in that moment, something shifted within me. The embers of resentment, long smoldering beneath the surface, began to flicker and ignite. Beneath the veil of resignation, a quiet resolve began to take shape. I wouldn't let Rebecca diminish me. I wouldn't let her steal my joy. I wouldn't disappear quietly into the shadows. I would reclaim my place, not through confrontation or bitterness, but through something far more potent, a Christmas dinner so spectacular, so unforgettable, that it would leave them speechless. A Christmas dinner that would not only silence my critics, but also remind them of the woman they had so carelessly dismissed. The rain continued to fall, but within the quiet solitude of my home, a seed of hope began to sprout, promising a bloom far more vibrant than any summer garden. This Christmas, I would show them what I was capable of. This Christmas, they would see. Rain lashed against the kitchen window, mirroring the storm inside me. You're simply too old to handle it, Esther, Rebecca had said, her voice dripping with false concern. Christmas dinner is a lot of work. The words echoed in my mind, sharp and cold. Julian just stood there, nodding like a bobblehead. Rebecca's right, Esther. He chimed in. Let us handle it this year. I picked up a chipped teacup, tracing the faded floral pattern. Too old. Incompetent. The words stung more than I cared to admit. I'd hosted Christmas dinner for over 30 years, building traditions, creating memories. Now, I was being pushed aside, deemed irrelevant. I set the teacup down with a decisive clink. Irrelevant. We'll see about that. I pulled out my recipe box, the worn wooden edges comforting under my fingers. My mother's handwriting, elegant and looping, filled the index cards, each one a testament to generations of Christmases past. Roast goose with apple and prune stuffing, Grandma Ruth's gingerbread cookies, spiced cranberry sauce with orange zest. These weren't just recipes, they were a legacy, and I wasn't about to let Rebecca and Julian erase it. They think they can just take over, I muttered to myself, a spark of defiance igniting within me. They think their store-bought, prepackaged Christmas can compare to mine. I grabbed a blank notepad and a pen, the familiar weight grounding me. This wasn't just about Christmas dinner anymore. This was about showing them, showing everyone, that I wasn't some fragile old woman to be dismissed. This year, Christmas dinner wouldn't just be good. It would be legendary. I started to write, the plan taking shape in my mind. First, the guest list. Everyone. My other children, their spouses, my grandchildren, even my estranged sister, Sarah. I'd call each one personally, extending a warm invitation, the kind Rebecca seemed incapable of. Next, the menu. It would be a feast for the ages, a culinary symphony that would leave them speechless. I wouldn't simply recreate the classics, I'd elevate them. The roast goose would be sourced from a local farm, seasoned with herbs I'd grown myself. The gingerbread cookies would be intricately decorated, each one a miniature work of art. The cranberry sauce, forget the canned stuff. This would be a slow-simmered masterpiece, infused with the warmth of cinnamon and the tang of citrus. I scribbled notes furiously, my hand flying across the page. Handmade pasta with truffle oil, a decadent chocolate torte with raspberry coulis, a champagne fountain, sparkling under the soft glow of Christmas lights. I could almost taste it, almost feel the warmth of the fire, hear the laughter of my family. But it wouldn't just be about the food. The atmosphere would be perfect. The house would be decked out in its finest holiday attire. Garlands draped across every doorway, twinkling lights illuminating every corner. The scent of pine and cinnamon would fill the air, creating a cozy, inviting ambience. I'd even hire a local musician to play carols on the grand piano, filling the house with the sounds of the season. I wanted it to be a Christmas they'd never forget, a Christmas that would make Rebecca and Julian realize just how much they'd underestimated me. I spent the next few weeks in a flurry of activity. I shopped for ingredients, tested recipes, and meticulously planned every detail. I even enlisted the help of my oldest grandchild, Lily, who shared my passion for baking. "Grandma, this is going to be amazing," she said, her eyes wide with excitement as we decorated gingerbread men together. "Just wait and see," I replied, a mischievous glint in my eye. I wasn't just planning a Christmas dinner. I was orchestrating a symphony of flavors, a spectacle of holiday cheer. I was reclaiming my place, not just as the matriarch of the family, but as a woman of strength, resilience, and unwavering determination. The phone rang, jarring me from my reverie. It was Marcus, my son. "Mom," he began hesitantly. "Rebecca and I were thinking maybe we could help with the dinner." I paused, a slow smile spreading across my face. "That's very kind of you, dear," I said, my voice dripping with just the right amount of sweetness. "But I have everything under control. Just bring yourselves and your appetites." I hung up the phone, a sense of quiet satisfaction washing over me. The game was afoot. They had no idea what was coming. They had no idea the Christmas magic I was about to unleash. And as the first snowflakes began to fall outside, I knew, with absolute certainty, that this Christmas would be one for the books. It would be the Christmas I took back my kitchen, and maybe, just maybe, something even more. Rain lashed against the bakery window, blurring the warm glow of the pastries inside. Rebecca's words, "You're simply not up to it, Esther," echoed in my mind, a chill colder than the November air. Not up to hosting Christmas, me. I'd hosted every major holiday, every birthday, every family gathering for the past 40 years. I closed my eyes, the scent of yeast and sugar doing little to comfort the ache in my chest. "Half a dozen crusty rolls, please," I told the baker, my voice steadier than I felt. He smiled, a kind, crinkled smile. "Big family gathering?" he asked, bagging the warm bread. "Something like that," I replied, a flicker of resolve igniting within me. Back home, the silence of the house pressed in on me. Usually, this time of year was filled with the anticipation of family, the joyful chaos of preparation. This year, it felt empty. I placed the rolls on the counter, next to the stack of cookbooks I'd borrowed from the library. Classic Christmas recipes, new twists on old favorites, even a few daring dishes I'd never attempted before. "All right, Esther," I muttered to myself, pulling out a well-worn notepad. Let's show them what not up to it really means. I began to meticulously plan the menu, each dish a carefully chosen component of my silent retaliation. Rebecca's dismissive words were fuel to my fire, each ingredient a carefully measured ingredient in my plan. The next day, I braved the bustling supermarket, the Christmas music a jarring contrast to my inner turmoil. "Can I help you, Mum?" a young man stacking oranges asked. "I'm looking for the freshest cranberries," I said, scanning the overflowing bins. "And the finest prime rib you have." I wasn't just buying groceries. I was assembling an arsenal. Each plump cranberry, each perfectly marbled rib roast, was a symbol of my determination. I wouldn't be sidelined, dismissed, or underestimated. I would create a Christmas feast so spectacular, so unforgettable, that Rebecca's words would wither in the face of its magnificence. The days that followed were a blur of chopping, mixing, simmering, and tasting. My kitchen became my sanctuary, my domain, where I could pour all my hurt and frustration into creating something beautiful. The aroma of spices filled the air, a fragrant promise of the feast to come. I practiced each dish, refining techniques, perfecting flavors, ensuring that every element would be flawless. I even consulted with old family friends, gathering tips and tricks passed down through generations. "Your mother always made the best Christmas pudding," Mrs. Rodriguez told me, her eyes twinkling. "She had a secret ingredient." I listened intently, absorbing every detail, determined to honor tradition while adding my own unique touch. One evening, Marcus called, his voice hesitant. "Mom, Rebecca and I were wondering if you'd reconsidered about Christmas." He paused, clearly expecting resistance. We could help you with the preparations." I took a deep breath, savoring the subtle shift in his tone. "That's very kind of you, Marcus," I said, my voice calm and even. "But everything is under control. I have it handled." He sounded surprised, almost relieved. "Okay, Mom, if you're sure." I was sure, more than sure. I hung up the phone, a small smile playing on my lips. The bait was set, the hook was in, and I knew, with a certainty that warmed me more than any festive fire, that this Christmas would be one they would never forget. I looked around my kitchen, at the gleaming countertops, the simmering pots, the carefully arranged ingredients. This wasn't just a Christmas dinner. It was a declaration, a testament to my resilience, my skill, my unwavering spirit. And as the first snowflakes began to fall outside, I knew deep in my heart that this was just the beginning. The aroma of roasting rosemary and garlic hung heavy in the air, a fragrant defiance to Rebecca's earlier pronouncement that I was simply too old to handle Christmas dinner. My kitchen, usually a cozy haven, felt like a battleground. Every gleaming copper pot, every perfectly ranged platter, was a soldier in my silent war. The doorbell chimed, announcing the arrival of my son, Marcus, his wife, Rebecca, and her parents. Deep breaths, Esther. I muttered to myself, smoothing down my apron. I opened the door with a smile I hoped didn't look too strained. "Merry Christmas," I chirped, ushering them in. Rebecca's mother, Patricia, gave me a tight-lipped smile. Her father, George, at least had the decency to look vaguely apologetic. Rebecca, however, offered a cursory Merry Christmas and immediately began surveying the room, her expression one of thinly veiled skepticism. "Everything looks nice," she said, the word nice dripping with faint praise. "Thank you, dear," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Dinner will be ready in about an hour. Please, make yourselves comfortable." I gestured towards the living room where a roaring fire crackled merrily in the fireplace. As they settled in, I returned to the kitchen, my heart pounding a steady rhythm against my ribs. This was it, the moment of truth. I checked the turkey, its skin golden brown and glistening. The potatoes were bubbling merrily in their creamy sauce, and the green beans, blanched and tossed with toasted almonds, were ready to be served. The centerpiece of the dinner, however, was the prime rib. I had marinated it for 2 days, using a secret recipe passed down from my grandmother. It was a masterpiece, and I knew it. The next hour was a blur of activity. I finished preparing the gravy, ranged the rolls in a basket, and set the table with my best china and silverware. Finally, everything was ready. "Dinner is served," I called out, my voice echoing through the house. They filed into the dining room, their faces betraying a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Rebecca took her seat next to Marcus, her eyes scanning the table. I could feel her scrutiny, but I held my head high, determined not to let her intimidate me. I served the turkey, the potatoes, the green beans, and finally, the prime rib. The moment I placed the platter on the table, a collective gasp went round the room. Even Rebecca's carefully composed facade crumbled. The prime rib was a work of art, its crust perfectly browned, its interior a rosy pink. While Marcus breathed, his eyes wide with admiration. "Mom, this looks incredible. It smells heavenly, Esther," Patricia added, a genuine smile finally gracing her lips. Even George, a man of few words, managed a grunt of approval. Rebecca, however, remained silent, her eyes fixed on the prime rib. "Well," I asked, meeting her gaze, "don't you have anything to say?" She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again, seemingly at a loss for words. Finally, she managed a weak, "It looks fine, just fine." I raised an eyebrow. "After you declared me incapable of hosting a proper Christmas dinner," a flush crept up Rebecca's cheeks. I may have been mistaken," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Indeed, you were," I said, my voice firm but not unkind. "Now shall we eat?" The dinner that followed was a resounding success. Everyone raved about the food, showering me with compliments. Even Rebecca had to admit that it was the best Christmas dinner she had ever had. As the evening progressed, the tension that had hung in the air slowly dissipated, replaced by a sense of warmth and camaraderie. I watched as my family laughed and talked, their faces glowing with happiness. This, I realized, was all I had ever wanted, to be surrounded by the people I loved, sharing a meal and creating memories. Rebecca's initial insult had stung, but it had also inadvertently given me the opportunity to prove myself, not just to her, but to myself. I had faced a challenge and emerged victorious, and as I looked around the table at my family's happy faces, I knew that this Christmas would be one to remember. But something about Rebecca's forced pleasantries didn't sit right. Her eyes held a flicker of something else, resentment, perhaps, or maybe calculation. There was a subtle shift in her demeanor, a quiet watchfulness that made me uneasy. She kept glancing at me, a strange little smile playing on her lips. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing beneath the surface. This victory, sweet as it was, felt incomplete, like a single, perfectly played note in a melody yet to unfold. The aroma of rosemary and garlic hung heavy in the air, a fragrant promise of the feast to come. "Remember when you said I couldn't handle Christmas dinner, Rebecca?" I asked, my voice steady as I adjusted the centerpiece of winter roses. Rebecca, perched on a stool at the kitchen island, looked up from her phone. "Did I say couldn't handle, or shouldn't handle?" she replied, a smirk playing on her lips. Julian, ever the peacemaker, intervened. "Come on, Rebecca, let's just enjoy the day," he said, placing a hand on her arm. "Of course, dear," I said, my smile not quite reaching my eyes. "Dinner will be ready in just a few minutes." I turned back to the dining room, the table gleaming under the soft light of the chandelier, laden with sparkling crystal and polished silver. It was a table fit for a queen, and today I was reclaiming my throne. The doorbell chimed, announcing the arrival of my other children and their families. A flurry of greetings filled the foyer, the joyful chaos of a family gathering. Soon, everyone was seated around the table, their eyes wide with anticipation. "This looks incredible, Mom," my eldest son, Daniel, said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. His wife, Sarah, echoed his sentiment. "It's absolutely beautiful, Esther," she said, her gaze sweeping over the elaborate spread. Even Rebecca seemed momentarily speechless, her usual critical air replaced by a flicker of surprise. I began serving, starting with the roasted turkey, its skin golden and crisp, the aroma making mouths water. Next came the honey-glazed ham, studded with cloves and glistening under the warm light. Mashed potatoes, fluffy and buttery, sat alongside vibrant green bean casserole, topped with crispy fried onions. Cranberry sauce, both jellied and whole berry, offered a tart counterpoint to the rich flavors of the main courses. There were bowls of gravy, steaming and fragrant, and a basket of freshly baked rolls, their crusts crackling invitingly. And then the piece de resistance, my grandmother's famous Yorkshire pudding, a towering masterpiece of golden, airy perfection. The silence around the table was broken only by the clinking of silverware against china and the occasional murmur of appreciation. "This turkey is amazing, Mom," Daniel said, taking another generous helping. "The best I've ever had." Sarah agreed, adding, "And the Yorkshire pudding, it's just like Nana used to make." Even Rebecca, after a moment of hesitation, took a bite and admitted, "It's good." I smiled, a quiet sense of triumph washing over me. This was more than just a Christmas dinner. It was a declaration, a statement that I was still capable, still relevant, still the heart of this family. As the meal progressed, the conversation flowed easily, laughter filling the room. Stories were shared, memories revisited, and bonds reaffirmed. It was the kind of Christmas dinner I had always dreamed of, a moment of perfect harmony and connection. Later, as everyone gathered round the fireplace, sipping coffee and enjoying dessert, Rebecca approached me, wanted to apologize. She stammered, her cheeks flushed, for what I said earlier. This dinner was wonderful. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a flicker of vulnerability beneath her usual facade. "Thank you, Rebecca," I said softly. "It means a lot to me." The evening drew to a close, the house slowly emptying as everyone said their goodbyes. Julian lingered, helping me clear the table. "You know," he said, his voice low, "Rebecca really does admire you. She just has a funny way of showing it." I smiled, understanding dawning. "I know, Julian," I replied. "I know." As I watched him walk out the door, a wave of contentment washed over me. I had not only proven myself to my family, but I had also gained something more valuable, a deeper understanding of the complex dynamics that bound us together. And as I finally sat down, the warmth of the fire chasing away the chill of the winter night, I knew that this Christmas would be one I would never forget. Not because of the perfectly roasted turkey or the flawlessly executed Yorkshire pudding, but because of the quiet victory I had achieved, a victory not of revenge, but of love and understanding. The embers glowed softly in the hearth, mirroring the warmth that spread through me. Tomorrow, a new day would dawn, and with it, a new chapter in our family's story. But for now, I allowed myself to bask in the glow of this Christmas night, a night where the spirit of the season had truly triumphed. The aroma of roasted prime rib still hung in the air, a testament to the evening's success. I watched as Rebecca, her face flushed with a mixture of surprise and something akin to awe, surveyed the remnants of the feast. Crystal glasses, now empty of fine wine, glittered under the soft chandelier light. Julian, ever the diplomat, cleared his throat. "Esther," he began, his voice unusually hesitant. This was incredible. "Truly," Rebecca chimed in, her earlier sharp tone replaced by a softer, almost uncertain cadence. I don't know what to say. I mean, I was wrong." She looked down at her hands, twisting her napkin. "This Christmas dinner was the best I've ever had." A warm wave of satisfaction washed over me. I had been banished from my own son's kitchen, deemed too old, too frail, too incompetent to host Christmas dinner. Rebecca had insisted on taking over, her words laced with a condescending sweetness that stung more than outright hostility. "It's just easier this way, Mom," she'd said, patting my hand. "You relax. We'll handle it." Handle it they did, turning my treasured family tradition into a sterile, catered affair last year. My son, Marcus, always the peacemaker, had tried to smooth things over. "Rebecca just wants to help," he'd whispered to me, but I saw the flicker of embarrassment in his eyes. He knew how much this meant to me. How could he not? I had hosted Christmas dinner for over 40 years, each year adding a new dish, a new tradition, weaving a tapestry of memories around our family table. But this year, I had woven a different kind of tapestry, one of quiet determination and meticulous planning. I had spent weeks perfecting the menu, sourcing the finest ingredients, even consulting with a renowned chef to elevate my classic recipes. And now, looking at Rebecca's humbled expression, I knew it had all been worth it. "It was nothing," I said, waving my hand dismissively, though inside, a triumphant little flutter took flight. My granddaughter, Lily, piped up from her seat, her eyes wide. "Grandma, can we have this every year? My heart melted. Of course, darling, I replied, squeezing her hand. The others joined in the chorus of praise. Even my usually quiet sister, Ruth, who had been observing the whole scene with a knowing smile, offered a rare compliment. "Esther, you've outdone yourself," she murmured, her eyes twinkling. Rebecca cleared her throat again. "Mom," she began, her voice still hesitant, "to you an apology. I was completely out of line. I underestimated you, and I'm truly sorry." She looked at me directly, her eyes filled with genuine remorse. "I hope you can forgive me." I met her gaze, a small smile playing on my lips. "Of course, Rebecca," I said. "It's Christmas, a time for forgiveness." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. "And besides," I added, my voice softening, "family is everything." The tension that had hung in the air for the past few weeks seemed to dissipate, replaced by a sense of warmth and reconciliation. We chatted for a while longer, the conversation flowing easily, laughter filling the room. As they began to gather their things to leave, Rebecca lingered behind. "Mom," she said, a shy smile on her face, Would you maybe consider helping me with Christmas dinner next year? I could really learn a lot from you." My smile widened. "I'd be happy to, Rebecca," I replied, placing a hand on her arm. "We can start planning in January." As I watched them drive away, the twinkling Christmas lights reflecting in their car windows, I couldn't help but feel a surge of triumph. I had not only reclaimed my place at the head of the table, but I had also gained something even more valuable: Rebecca's respect, and perhaps even a genuine connection. The house felt quiet now, the echoes of laughter still lingering in the air. I walked over to the fireplace, the warmth radiating against my face. This Christmas, I had given my family a gift they wouldn't soon forget, a gift of tradition, of love, and perhaps a subtle reminder of the quiet strength that resided within their 71-year-old mother and grandmother. I looked at the framed photo on the mantelpiece, a picture of me and my late husband taken on our first Christmas together. He would have been proud. And as I turned to start clearing the table, a new thought sparked in my mind. This Christmas had been a victory, yes, but it was just the beginning. I had plans for next year, big plans. The soft glow of the Christmas tree lights danced on the faces of my family, a scene warmer and more precious than any gift under its branches. Earlier that day, Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, had declared me too old and frail to host Christmas dinner. "Honestly, Esther," she'd said, her voice dripping with condescension, "wouldn't it be easier for everyone if we just had it at our place? You deserve a rest." A rest. As if I were some doddering invalid. Now, looking around at the laughter and lively chatter filling my home, I couldn't help but savor the quiet victory that simmered beneath the surface of polite conversation. "This stuffing is incredible, Mom," my son, Marcus, said, beaming. "You've really outdone yourself." I smiled, accepting the compliment with a gentle nod. "Just a little family recipe, dear," I replied, my eyes meeting Rebecca's across the table. Her smile seemed strained, a thin veil over something less pleasant. "Yes, Julian," Rebecca's fiancé, chimed in. "It's certainly different from what we're used to." He cast a sideways glance at Rebecca, a silent communication passing between them. I could practically hear the unspoken words. "See, I told you." "Different how, Julian?" I asked, my voice deceptively light. He stammered for a moment, clearly caught off guard. "Oh, well, just more traditional," he finally managed. "Traditional?" I echoed, raising an eyebrow. "You mean like the recipes passed down through generations? The ones that bind families together?" The conversation quieted. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath. Rebecca shifted in her seat, a faint flush rising in her cheeks. "Of course, Esther," she said, a little too quickly. "We just meant well. You know modern tastes and all." I sipped my wine, letting the silence hang in the air for a beat longer. Then I leaned forward, a conspiratorial glint in my eye. "Speaking of tradition," I began, my voice dropping to a low murmur, "I have a little surprise for everyone." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside, nestled among the soft fabric, were several keys. I held them up, letting the light catch the gleaming metal. "As some of you know," I continued, my gaze sweeping over the faces around the table, "this house has been in my family for generations. It's filled with memories, with the echoes of laughter and love." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "And it is with great joy that I announce I've decided to officially pass it on to Marcus." My son's eyes widened in disbelief. He looked from the keys to me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Mommy don't know what to say," he finally stammered, his voice thick with emotion. "You don't have to say anything, dear," I replied, placing the keys in his hand. "Just promise me you'll fill it with the same joy and love that it's always held." He nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand, his grip tight and heartfelt. The room erupted in congratulations, a cacophony of happy exclamations and well wishes. Even Rebecca managed a weak smile, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. Perhaps it was regret, perhaps disappointment, or perhaps, just perhaps, it was a dawning realization that she had underestimated the quiet strength of the woman she had so casually dismissed. The evening continued in a warm haze of celebration. As I watched my family gathered around me, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the Christmas tree lights, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Rebecca's earlier slight had stung, yes, but it had also sparked something within me. It had reminded me of my own resilience, of the enduring power of family, and of the quiet satisfaction of a victory hard won. And as I looked at the keys now safely in Marcus's hands, I knew that this Christmas, more than any other, would be one to remember. It wouldn't just be remembered for the delicious food or the festive decorations, but for the quiet transfer of legacy, a subtle shift in the family dynamics, a silent acknowledgement of the matriarch who, despite what some might think, was far from ready to be put out to pasture. I glanced at Rebecca one last time. She was watching me, a complex mix of emotions swirling in her eyes. And in that moment, I knew that my little Christmas surprise had delivered a message far more potent than any words could ever convey.